American security.
If this were truly just a social experiment where we were lowering standards to let more women through, I think we would see much better data than what we're seeing, which is actually the upholding of these immensely difficult standards.
Thousands serve in Army infantry roles, but women remain a fraction of the overall combat roles, she says.
He is right that not many women do pass.
Standards gender neutral since 1994. For several years, the Army did experiment with a neutral standard for the physical fitness test that all soldiers are required to pass. But by 2022, the service reinstated gender and age standards because the failure rate was too high. She says a woman who could make it through the grueling Ranger School should easily pass the male version of the Army's basic fitness test.
A lot of it is just, it's the same sort of gossip that goes around on anything. It's not just, it's the same sort of gossip that goes around on anything. It's not fair. I flunked out and she didn't.
The Senate is
legal status. Homeland Security officials say the Biden-era policy made it easier for migrants with criminal records to hide from law enforcement. But critics say the change will make it harder, as Brian Mann reports.
When Hugo Soto Martinez heard the Trump administration had canceled a federal guideline sheltering churches and schools from immigration raids, he thought of his own family.
My parents would be labeled as criminals when I was growing up, when they were dropping me off to school or taking me to church.
Soto Martinez is a council member in Los Angeles whose parents didn't have legal status in the U.S. He co-sponsored a measure last year that prevents city agencies, including the L.A. School District, from aiding federal immigration agents. He says this move by the Trump administration is already causing fear.
He's getting what he wants, and that's making people feel very afraid, especially in the areas where they know they are usually with their family, and I think it's completely despicable.
In a statement explaining the change, the Department of Homeland Security said the Biden administration's decision to classify certain areas as sensitive and off limits to DHS enforcement allowed migrants, quote, including murderers and rapists, to avoid arrest. Criminals will no longer be able to hide in America's schools and churches, the statement changed to make schools and churches major targets. Melman is with Federation for American Immigration Reform.
There's every reason to believe this is going to be used with great discretion and only in circumstances where the person that they're after poses a serious threat to the communities.
Hildebrand Colon Hernandez, who heads a group in New York City called New Immigrant Community Empowerment, says this change will drive some migrant families deeper underground.
Removing the protections for churches or schools, those two locations in particular represent something more to families and people because it's a place of gathering, it's a place of worship, but at the same time, not surprised.
During a press conference this week, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said he spoke with church and immigrant community leaders about the Trump administration's policies, urging them not to panic. He said migrant families should keep using essential services regardless of their legal status.
We want to bring down the anxiety. We want our immigrants to know that this is a city of immigrants. This is a country of immigrants. It's imperative that you go to school, use the hospital service, use the police services.
Some school districts and churches around the U.S. responded to this change in DHS enforcement guidelines by saying they'll refuse to cooperate with migrant arrests, posting notices that immigration police aren't welcome on church or school grounds. Brian Mann, NPR News, New York.
Speed limit camera.
You're listening to All Things Considered on WAMU 88.5. I'm Tamika Smith. Coming up tonight at 8, federal government workers top the list for the new Trump administration. So WAMU and 1A think it's time to get together to have a national call-in on the future of the federal workforce. Join Todd Swillick tonight, starting at 8.
Americans' mistrust of ultra-processed foods is growing.